Hi, Happy New Year from Chickenbone John Guitars. I'm just going to talk about amplifiers and what I actually have myself. So is this not a comprehensive review of amplifiers? And what if you're playing cigarbox guitar, what's a good amp to have in whatever situation? You don't need anything special for a cigarbox guitar. Regular guitar amps are fine. So here's what I've got in my office. This is a Roland microcube, 3 watts, battery powered or mains adapter. This is a Fender Super Champ, which is a valve hybrid, so it's got electronic assistance in there. I'll talk about these things in more detail. This is a Session Blues Baby, a 22 watt solid state amp. And this, probably the most traditional of these, is a 22 watt Fender Deluxe Reverb. I'll talk about each of these. I've had other amps, and I'll talk a little bit about why I sort of got rid of them and so forth, or why I haven't got them here. There's a bit of a gap here between this little 3 watter and this 15 watt. We do stock, I don't think we've got them in at the moment, but we do stock the Vox Pathfinder 10, which is a mains powered practice amp, 10 watt, so not quite as powerful as this, much simpler electronically, and that sits nicely between those two. Roland apparently have discontinued this madly. There used to be the Vox, I think it was the Mini 3 and the Mini 5, which I thought were better than this, but crazily they've been discontinued. So the nearest thing you're going to get to this is something like the Vox Mini 3 Go, battery powered small amp. And then between, I used to have a Sessionette 75 watt. It's a little bit bigger and heavier than this, 75 watt twin channel. And I used to have a massive Fender valve amp, which was a 75 watt, and it got a 15-inch speaker. The reason I got rid of the Fender, it was just ridiculously heavy. I just couldn't cope with carrying it anymore. The Sessionette, it was getting a bit old, but it's a great amp. But I built this, which is a Session 22 watt. It's in a Fender cabinet. But I felt this sounded better than the Sessionette, and I got rid of it. I also had a Session Rocket 30 watter. I got rid of that, and I had an old Carlsberg, I think it's a Wasp little practice amp, about 10-12 watts. I got rid of that. So I've accumulated a couple more, but I think I'm quite happy with what I've got here. Okay, let's have a look at this one. This is the Roland microcube. It's just got one input, and it's got various degrees of gain or distortion, is the simplest way of saying it, on this setting. And there's an acoustic setting. The next one is called JC Clean, which is Jazz Chorus Clean, which is an emulation of their very famous big combo amp. You can hear it's not got any distortion on it. Black panel, which is a sort of Fender style amp, starting getting a bit of an edge. We go Brit combo, which I suppose would be something like a Vox. You can hear some distortion coming in. Classic stack, Marshall. It's getting louder, more overdriven. And then there's the rectifier setting, which would be something like a Mesa Boogie. So that's the range of tones on that. You've got a tone, which is just putting on less or more treble. You've got effects, which is cool. There was nothing on there, and I'll just wind these around. There's a little bit of, we can have reverb. I'm back on the Jazz Clean setting, Jazz Core. hear a little bit of reverb, or you can have delay. You can't have them both together. Rockabilly style stuff. I'll turn that off. And then you've got chorus. It's sort of like dreamy, washy sound. You got flanger, which is a little bit similar. And then you've got phaser. They're all quite similar, that sort of washy, sort of a psychedelic sound. And then you have got good old tremolo, which is my favourite. The other control on here, you've got volume, which is obviously, I'll take all those settings off. Tone, you can go from low, put a bit more treble on it. Now you've got a volume control, which obviously makes it louder or quieter, and you've got a gain control. The gain is a sort of secondary volume, but the gain affects how much distortion or overdrive you get on it. I'll put it into, I think this is, let's put it on the Vox setting. Got a little bit of distortion creeping in. If I put the gain up without increasing the volume, if I wind it down, it's not quite so aggressive. So that's about it. You've got a line out, so you can use it with headphones or put this through a PA system, which is a great way of using a little home amp. You could actually use that for a live performance if that you put it through a PA system, almost treating it like an effects pedal. So that's that. For most people playing at home, this is a great little amp. 3 watts, plenty loud enough. It's only got something like 5-inch or 4.5-inch speaker, so you're not going to get the lows, you're not going to get much volume out of it. Now, here's our second amp that we're going to look at. This is a Fender Super Champ. This is interesting because it's valve, but it's also got the same sort of amp modelling, these distortion or amp emulation effects, and it's also got some digital effects. So it's very similar to that. But it's 15 watts. This is plenty loud enough to gig with. So it's actually got 2 channels, and you can switch. It's only got 1 input, as you can see. It's got 1 input, but it's got a separate foot switch, and you can switch between the 2 channels, explain what they do. This really is just the basic valve amp. There's a little bit of reverb on that. I'll take that off. I'll talk about the effects in a minute. So this is your basic setting, and you've got treble, wound the treble down, I'll put that in the mid position, and you've got bass. That's in the mid setting. It's only on 3, so it's quite it'll go pretty loud. 10-inch speaker is going to project very well, and that will work fine for live work. Now, it's got another channel. You can foot switch it, but I'll just switch through here. I've got 16 different voices, and they go from quite modest to quite aggressive. I think there's an interesting thing here to understand. Just like the other amp, it's got a volume control. Okay, that affects how loud it is, but it's got a gain control. controls how much of that distortion or overdrive you get in each of those effects. Okie doke. So these are commonly called a master volume amp. This one on this channel, it's just got volume, so the distortion you can only get by running it louder and louder. The advantage of the master volume, or what an amp that's got a volume and a gain, is you can get that sound you want at the volume you want. It's got some effects. I'll put it back on the clean channel. And we've got reverb. You can dial in how much of that. It's got reverb. What is it? It's got delay. It's got chorus. And it's got tremolo. I like a bit of reverb. That's on 10, that's ridiculous. It's a digital reverb, not a spring traditional mechanical echo. I always like a bit of reverb. It just fills the sound out, makes it sound bigger. So if I wanted reverb and trem, I'd probably put a tremolo pedal in front of it. Okay, that's that. Okay, this is a Session Blues Baby. It's a 22 watt. It's basically a solid state emulation of the Fender Blues Junior. It's a single channel. It's got bass, middle and treble controls. That's the treble wound up a little bit. That's the bass wound up. I'll put everything in the middle. Now this has got a master volume. That's with effectively the gain wound up. And then you can make the whole thing louder. Too loud. If I wind that down, so you might have to juggle between the master volume and the amount of gain. If you want a bit more grit to it, I'll add that in. So that's the way that works. If you wanted to go from clean to dirty, you can't pedal switch this, so you'd probably have to put something like a gain pedal, something like a Boss Blues driver or something like that in to give you that edge. This is the last one, and this is probably the most traditional. It's a Fender Deluxe Reverb. It's 22 watts, same as that. 12-inch speaker, same as that. But this is entirely valve. I've just switched it on, let the valves warm up, and then I'll put the switch it on properly. It's got a bit of reverb on it. It's got two channels. These are voiced differently. This is the traditional sound of one of these amps. It's not got a master volume, so to get more distortion, you just have to keep turning it up, and that can get to be an unacceptable high level of your volume. This custom channel, I think, is more modelled on the Fender Bassman, so it tends to break up, give you a bit more distortion earlier. So you could switch, you could plug two cables in and split your signal and switch between the two. You can switch on the reverb and the tremolo on this. But let's just put it in here. I've got a little bit of reverb. I'm not going to bother with the trem. And to my mind, this has got a lovely, smooth, rich sound. It's only got treble and bass. It hasn't got a middle control. It's got a little bit of reverb, so we can wind the bass up. We can wind the treble up. beginning to drive it a little bit. If I turn the volume up, for me too much treble. Wind that down to about 3. The other channel, I think it breaks up earlier. Wind the bass down. That's a clean sound, and then if I can hear it come on there, that's about 5. So that's the range of those amps. As I say, it's sort of a few things are missing, probably in between there. That something like the 10-watt practice amp, Vox Pathfinder is a great. That's another great little bridging amp. But from here on up, you can gig with these. I've got nothing more than 22 watts. If you're looking for an amp that's a bit more flexible, look at one which has got either described as a separate master volume or a volume and a gain. Okay, so between these, that's just single channel, different sounds. This is dual channel. You don't need a gain pedal. You can switch between and get both of those sounds with no effects pedals. It's got built-in effects. If you wanted to say reverb and trem, I think you might be able to modify this through the software to get both, but I can't be bothered to do that. So I'm happy to have a little bit of reverb and put a tremolo pedal on. This is very similar. You've just got the reverb, so if you want to trem, you need to switch that on. This is a single channel amp. It's got master volume, so it will give you those tones. It will give you those tones from clean to dirty, but you can't switch between them. I think that's the disadvantage of this amp. Similar to this, it's got 2 channels, but they're both very, very similar. This isn't a really super high gain channel. So if you want some dirt without it getting too loud, you might have to put a drive pedal, something like the Boss Blues driver, or I've got a T-Rex dual drive, which is very nice because you can set that for some gain, and then you can double up and get a boost on it, so you can actually get quite a lot of sounds out of that, still relying on that basic lovely fat valve sound. This very small speaker, low wattage, great for home. This will get you into gigging territory. 10-inch speaker, and I think for live work you really want to be looking at a 10-inch speaker, but for my money the ideal situation for live work is a 12-inch speaker. Beyond this you get into twin 12-inch speakers, sometimes twin 10s. You can get things like there's a Fender amp which has got 4 10-inch speakers, so they tend to be I think it's the Super Reverb, they tend to be very heavy. You've also got the Fender Twin Reverb, which is very heavy. We're talking about weight. This is very light, it's only about 7.5 pounds. This is about 24 pounds. This will be, I suppose, about 30, mid-30s. This is coming in, they tell me, let me just have a look at my crib sheet. Yeah, my crib sheet tells me that this is about 36 pounds. This is a lighter version, they're usually over 40. This has got a lighter weight speaker with a neodymium magnet, and it's got a pine cabinet which might save £1 or 2. It's still quite weighty, 35-40 pounds. I wouldn't want to be carrying anything heavier than that. my old 75 amp, the Fender 75, weighed about 70 pounds. And that's really one of the main reasons I got rid of it. It was just too unwieldy. A Fender Twin Reverb will weigh about that 75, 80 pounds. The Fender Twin Reverb also is renowned for having this what they call clean headroom. You can make it very loud and it'll still be clean. A lot of people like that and then put pedals in front of it, which I always feel is a bit of an odd way of doing it. I'd rather have my amp sound nice than to have to rely on pedals. So as I say, I tend to use, if I use these, I'll tend to put an overdrive pedal just to lift it a little bit, but it's not colouring the sound too much. I never used to discriminate too much between solid state and valve. As far as the people listening out there in the audience, if you're playing to an audience, they probably won't take any notice. They won't be interested. If they're listening to your amplifier, I think you're doing something wrong. But for me, the valve sound with this is a very rich and warm sound. The lower registers I love. It's a very smooth sound, even when it starts breaking up. And I think the 10-inch speaker compared to the 12, there's quite a big difference. And especially with something like this guitar, a lot of people have played G, D, G. It's quite a low register instrument, basically. So having that push from a 12-inch speaker, I really like that. Don't need any more. Don't need two 10s or two 12s. This is a great compromise amp. Let's talk about money. These things were about 100, 120 quid when they came out. It sounds like a lot for a little amplifier. Sadly, it's discontinued. So second-hand's the way to go. I got that for 35 quid and it's been with me for donkey's years. It's been with me on every tour in the UK and Europe. Still gets used all the time here in the office. The nearest things you're going to find to these now, I think, are the Vox Mini Go amps. The one in between this, as I said, the Vox Pathfinder, they're coming in at about 75, 90 quid. Something like this, which is a hybrid valve amp, you're going to pay quite a lot because it's Fender. It's pretty decent quality, made in Mexico, not the Far East. You're going to pay £200 to £300 for something like that used. This is a fancy one because it's got this nice cream finish and a special fret cloth. It's got a better speaker. It's got a, I can't remember the name. It's called a Raging Cajun, which is a bit better than the Fender's own. So that brings that up to a premium. You know, say you'll get, if you can get one of these for a couple of hundred quid in good order, you're doing well. But the price seems to be going up. 300, 350 isn't out of the way. For that sort of money, there's a lot of guitar amps in the shops for you to choose from. Something like this, I put this together myself from a chassis and a speaker and a reverb tank and a spare cabinet. These are going to be coming, if you're to buy the whole thing, you'd be going up to £400 or £500 for something like that, new. The valve equivalent, the Blues Junior, new, I think they're probably wrong. I think they're in the £700 mark, but second hand, you know, you can get them at a reasonable value. This sort of thing, old school, Fender 100% valve amp. This isn't hand wired, it's on a printed circuit board. But new, this is going to be knocking on the door of £1,500. This is a more expensive one, with, as I say, with a lighter cabinet, lighter speaker. So it bumped the price up a couple of hundred quid. But you can get one of these. We're probably talking about £1,200–1,300. They do a couple of models. What they call the silver face, which is I think the 68, or the one with a black panel in front, which I think is a 65. On that one, you haven't got reverb and tremolo on both channels, you've just got it on one. For me, I fancied the idea of it on both, but I don't really switch between the two. And to be honest, the tremolo is a little noisy on this. and also you get a little bit of background hum on this. I think it's worse on this than on the one with the black panel, the black face one. So it's a matter of preference there, but it's nice to have the two different voicings on this amp. But it's serious money. Even second hand, you know, you're going to be talking 700 or 800 quid for a good example. Fender have issued a digital reissue of this. No valves, it's all basically computer chip. It's much lighter, probably, I think they're around about 25 pounds. You know, it's this sort of weight, a lot lighter, 2/3 of the weight. I think they put it in a pine cabinet, lightweight speaker. And the great thing about that also, it's got an attenuator on the back, which basically acts as a master volume. So you can dial it in, so it will only give you a fraction of a watt, or 1 watt, or 5 watts, or 22 watts, which is great. I did try one in the shop, and it was very nice. I didn't A to B it with this, but at the time when there were £1,000, 1,200 quid new, it wasn't going to part me with the money. I think I might be persuaded to buy one now, as possibly as a supplement to that, but I'd still be paying 700 or 800 quid for a digital version of this. Main advantage is it's lighter, and as I say, you can attenuate the sound. It's effectively got a master volume on it, which I think is a great bonus. So that's my amplifiers. As I say, it's not comprehensive. This is what I use. Knocking around the office, probably most of my gigs I'll probably do with that. If I get a slightly larger venue, I'll probably use the Deluxe Reverb. A little bit heavier. I'll need to put a drive pedal in front of it and a tram pedal, but that's not a big deal. This was, I was using this quite a lot after I got rid of the Sessionette 75. But then I dipped my toe back into valves after I got rid of all my valve amps. This, I think, is a great little amp. Love it to bits. Up from this, on the Fender line, you'll get the Princeton Reverb, which it's 12 watts, a little bit less powerful, same 10-inch speaker. But again, it's £1,000 amp. Just on other video channels, I do talk about this, and I talk also about the Vox Pathfinder, the 10-watt practice amp. And I also do a demonstration of what pedals I use with this to get my stage sound. Okay, that's me talking about my amps. I hope it's been some help. Just to remember, you don't need anything special for playing cigar box guitar. Regular guitar amp will be fine. And it depends whether you want to just be playing at home, or if you fancy playing out a little bit, you might want to go up to something like this. You don't need to spend a huge amount of money. Second hand, built myself from, it's easy enough, they just plug together, from a used cabinet, second hand. So you can get what you want for really a fraction of the price new. I'm not mad keen on stuff like digital modelling, where you have to press in buttons and make a lot of selections. This is quite nice like this, because you just click, 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 click around the various sounds, and it goes basically more and more distorted. And then you can just, with the gain, you can decide how much of that overdrive distortion sound you want. Same with the effects. Click, 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 click round. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's it. No pressing of buttons, no digital displays or anything like that. So I think that's one. It just confuses me. You spend a lot of time fiddling about with it, and I found, it's a bit like with your dishwasher or your washing machine. You'll find the 1 or 2 settings that work for you. And that's the great thing about that simple click, click, click selection, where you've got a limited number of selections. As I say, you'll probably find 1 or 2 sounds on the amp you really like. clean and with some drive, 1 or 2 sounds and the effects. That's it. Okay, thanks for watching. Bye for now.